Welcome. David Quigley, Provost and Dean of Faculties here at Boston College, and thrilled to welcome all of you who are here for this afternoon's formative education lecture. It's been a while since we've been able to gather either virtually or in person for this lecture series, but I think we have a real engaging presentation up in store for you over the next hour plus. Let me begin though with just some framing remarks about the work we've been doing across the university in support of one of the key elements of the university's strategic plan in support of formative education, working closely with Margaret Lawrence here in my office, with Dean Stanton Wortham in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, and with Father Jack Butler, who's the Vice President for University Mission and Ministry. We, for the last 3 years now, have been engaging in a wide-ranging university conversation and a set of new projects designed to explore new ways where we can be even more intentional and impactful in delivering on the kind of distinctiveness of Boston College's approach to formative education in the Jesuit tradition. As I mentioned, it engages a number of new forms of practice, new experiments, new ways of thinking about undergraduate and graduate student life, co-curricular projects, engaging different members of the community. There's a good deal of community building that this lecture series and others have been critical in allowing us to bring together a wide-ranging group of colleagues on campus to talk about our greatest hopes, our deepest desires for our student and their futures, and how that informs the work that we do as a community of faculty and colleagues across the Boston College campus. And then lastly, something that we were pleased to be able to launch 2 years ago and that we're re-upping again this year is a set of research initiatives funding faculty and other members of the community in doing research to identify what in particular makes a difference in the classroom experiences, in the overall experiences of our undergraduate and graduate students across their time at Boston College, and in the impact we hope they'll have in the larger world. We look forward to re-energizing all of our work in formative education as we move beyond this pandemic in the next few months. As we're getting ready to turn on the cameras here, we were talking about the rates of vaccination here and in the Midwest, and the hopes that we have as that takes even greater speed over the next few months. In particular, one thing we've learned, we've always known it here at Boston College on the Heights, but it's been driven home with great emphasis over the last 13 months, is that the work of transforming young people's lives, the work of delivering on the formative education promise requires a deep commitment to place and being in community with each other. And we're very anxious to have this conversation today play out and have a range of additional webinars and lunches and virtual events over the next few months. But by the end of the spring and as we move through the summer and onto the fall, to begin to gather together in person here on campus to really recommit to the work of formative education as we go along. So thanks for joining us. And let me offer the first of a couple of introductions here, at least on my end. The one that I'll offer up is the introducer of our distinguished visitor who will be here. But many of you know Professor Jackie Lerner from the Lynch School. She's been on campus for the last 2 decades plus, leading programs within the Lynch School and doing really important work that traces the kind of flourishing of young people in their communities, in their families, in their schools, and helping to give voice to Lynch School conversations about what allows for a thriving in individual cases and in communities as we go along. So it's my great delight to, at this point, introduce Professor Jackie Lerner to come onto the camera and offer up an introduction to our distinguished visitor.
Start my video, unmute. Is that me? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to introduce Marvin. I promise it won't take more than an hour. Just kidding, Margaret. So I really consider myself lucky to call Marvin a dear friend. In addition to being a staunch advocate for all things character education, in a normal year, he would be here in Boston. He would be in my guest room, having dinner at Shea Lerner. So I'm really looking forward to those times again, but I'm really pleased that we're able to bring him all into our homes and offices. So for the formal stuff, he is the McDonald Professor of Character Education and co-director of the Center for Character and Citizenship at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and System President Thomas Jefferson Fellow. He's a developmental psychologist specializing in character development and education. He's the author of You Can't Teach Through a Rat, Parenting for Good, and more than 100 book chapters and journal articles. He and the co-editor of the Journal of Character Education. How could I forget that one? His newest book, Primed for Character, will be out in April 2021. He's the recipient of the Character Education Partnership's Lifetime Achievement Award and the Association for Moral Education's Good Work Award. and Kumagura Career Award. With great pleasure, here's Marvin Berkowitz. I think those were only a few of his awards, but we want to give more time for him. So welcome, Marvin.
Thank you, Dean Quigley. Thank you, Jackie. It's great to be here. It would be much better if I wasn't lying and I was really there. I'm only metaphorically there. I always loved coming back to Boston. I did my postdoctoral work in Boston in the late 70s, and always relished the chance to go back. I think in light of the demise of democracies around the world, I am going to engage in polarizing discourse at the beginning. I think that's the spirit of the times. So if you look over my shoulder, you Bostonians, you will see all sorts of evil symbols up on the wall there: Yankee pennant and the New York Giants pennant and Mets pennant and the Packers pennant. Um, uh, so that's the alienating part. The positive part is I spent 20 years as a professor at Marquette University working for the Jesuits and loved every second of it, and only left because I got headhunted for an endowed professorship elsewhere. Otherwise, I would have spent 40 years of my career working for the Jesuits. So there's a degree to which I understand this wonderful mission that Dean Quigley that Provost Quigley talked about, and the degree to which I understand the Jesuit mission. I don't propose to be an expert in that, but I want to say that just as framing comments up front. And I also particularly want to thank Dean Wortham and Margaret Lawrence, who were my main contacts in inviting me and setting up this lecture today. And just a shout out to not only Jackie, who's a colleague and friend, but also to Scott Sider and Bell Liang, who are longstanding colleagues of mine, who are also at BC and who are potentially great assets to this enterprise through the same window that I look at it from, which is the window of human development. So I just wanted to do that to begin with. And then I am going to share my screen with you because I'm going to do a PowerPoint. I had no idea, how many people were going to be on this, so I didn't prepare any interactive work. It's a short lecture, but we have a substantial amount of time for Q&A at the end. And so please do put your questions into the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. Dean Wortham is going to be the moderator for that when I am done with my presentation. So let me share my screen. And this will take me just 1 second here as I do this. And go to slideshow. And I think we're good to go. So hopefully you can see this. This is the cumbersome title I came up with this time, which is that I'm going to talk today about both the formation of human goodness and how we build the capacity to nurture human goodness in others. And those are important. That's an important distinction that I'm going to come back to as I go through this. I'm trying to do a number of things in this talk. I am trying to give you an overview of character education, but I'm also trying to leverage what I know about character education for this, grand scheme that Provost Quigley talked about of formative education through, in a Jesuit tradition in the BC format. He used the phrase "for our students and their future," which I think is a great way to think about this. We're investing in them now, but we're investing in who they become. And I'm going to talk more about that later. So I'm hoping to make these connections at various touch points as I go through this. I'm not an expert on formative education, but I certainly resonate with it and understand it. And I think it connects to the way that I engage the world of character education. But I want to start off with four framing thoughts. It's a little odd, but I think it'll put you in the frame of mind. So the first one is I'm going to tell you a joke, and then I'm going to talk about an approach to this whole project. Then I'm going to talk about a shift that I encourage people to begin to do or to do. And then I want to at least touch on what I call the semantic morass in this field to help deal with some of the language. So the joke. Okay, some of you may have heard this before, but it's an important framing joke. So a man is walking down the street one night, and it's dark. And down at the end of the street, he sees another man on his hands and knees underneath a streetlight, looking through the grass. And being a good Samaritan, he says, "Hey, buddy, did you lose something?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I lost my keys. Can't go home without them." He said, "Well, let me help you." And the good Samaritan gets down on his hands and knees and starts looking through this patch of grass with him. And it's not a very big patch of grass. It doesn't take long to figure out there are no keys there. And so he says to the man who lost his keys, "Are you sure you lost your keys here?" And the guy says, "No, oh no, no, no. I lost them about half a block back that way." And the good Samaritan, exasperated, says, "Well, why are we looking here?" And the man replies, "The light is better here." This is a critical mistake we make all the time, which is we go where the light is brighter and we don't go where the keys to whatever it is we're trying to solve are. We need to find the keys. And that's what I'm hoping to do today is give you some of the keys to how do we effectively do formation of character. The second framing thought is an approach, backward design, which should be familiar to a lot of people. But the idea is we can't get into character education until we know what character is. What's the end game here? If we're doing character education, there's only one purpose for it. It's to nurture the formation of character. Until we figure out what that character is and how it forms, we can't engage in character formation or character education. In fact, I was today working with a group that's got some big grant trying to create some training for school principals, school leaders more broadly, in character education. And they were proposing a series of trainings and modules. And they had what is character education at the end of it? What is character? I'm sorry, at the end of it, the nature of character. They said, no, you can't do that. You got to start with the end in mind. So that's really critical for us as well. And for BC, that's a matter of, and I'm sure it's well articulated at BC, I'm not doubting that. What do we mean by the outcomes of formation at BC in this Jesuit way? The shift is from doing to being. And in some senses, it's almost a Buddhist mentality. And what we rush to do is implement things to do. We put in programs, we put in curricula, we do all sorts of things like that. When the real key, as we'll see as we move through this, or the largest key to character formation, is how we be with others. And transforming how we be with others is often gets short shrift and is critical. And lastly, the semantic morass. For those of you who are familiar with some pieces of this question of how does the world of education and psychology think about all this, have probably bumped up against lots of different terms. You've probably bumped up against social emotional learning, character education, virtues education, formative education, positive psychology, values education, and so on. There are all of these terms out there, and there are culture wars going on over who has ascendancy at the moment, who gets more into federal legislation, whose language is used more, and so on and so on. I've been doing this for it's now going on half a century, and I've worked under lots of different terms. It's those terms change over time, and those terms change also by locality. In different parts of the world, different terms are more comfortable to people and others are less comfortable to people. What matters is what you're talking about, not what you call it. What matters is doing what actually works. What matters is having a justifiable end, the backward design, and then doing that which will be most likely to influence it in the way that you want to. And that's so don't worry too much about whether someone else is calling it social emotional learning and someone else is calling positive psych. Look past the words at what they're actually doing. And some of them will be doing things that you'll resonate with, and others using the same terminology will be doing something that you think is is ill-conceived, wrong-headed. So what do you need to educate for character formation? Well, it's actually complicated. And that's another part of this. I often tell people that character education is rocket science. This stuff is not quite so simple as a lot of people want to make it out to be or hope that it is. So, one, you need to know what character is. And I already talked about that. Two, you need to know how character develops or forms. Then you need to do that which effectively nurtures character education. Use the keys, do the keys. And lastly, you need to be the kind of person that's best positioned to nurture character formation. And that's the doing to being. So there's a knowing, there's a being, there's a doing in this. And these are different competencies, different transitions, different changes. And therefore, we have to make sure we don't leave anything out. So as we prepare people for character formation, we have to teach them so they know what character is. We have to teach them about how it actually develops, not just what the outcome is. You know, we're currently doing a paper on Aristotelian phronesis. And what I wanted to know naively was, how does Aristotle explain how virtue forms? Not well is the answer. He didn't spend a whole lot of time on that one. And so we're playing reading between the lines and reading other work and reading extrapolations. But we need to know, how does it form? It's nice to say the end point is the virtuous human being with phronesis and so on from an Aristotelian point of view. But then if we want to get people there, we have to figure out, how does that happen? And being a developmental psychologist, this is a no-brainer to me, but it's not to everybody. And you also need to teach people effective methods. And lastly, you've got to invest in the formation of those people who are going to be doing character education, character formation. So they are the kind of person who can do that optimally. So these are some of the things we're going to be talking about. Let's start off with, what is character? And I intentionally use that chisel picture there because what is character? Sorry, not character education. Because the word character comes from the Greek, meaning to leave a mark. The idea is to put a mark in a coin or a stone or something like that. And that's where that term character originated from. Eventually, it broadened to mean leaving the marks on people, their nature. And that's how it got to be the term that's used for what we mean by character now. And it's reasonably complicated. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. This one comes from my colleague David Shields, although a lot of others are using it and not giving him credit. So I always try to give him credit for it. He had an article in Phi Delta Kappan about a decade ago on this, talking about 4 domains of character. And this was my really unsatisfying graphic rendering of how I understand the relationships. No one's really talking about the relationships between these 4. I'm trying to depict it somehow. The top and bottom halves of the circle are moral and performance character. And that goes back, Tom Lacona and Matt Davidson talked a lot about this. And the moral side of your character has to do with that which allows you to do what is ethically right. I'm not going to get into great depth on this here. And the performance side of your character is that which allows you to do things really well, to do things excellently, whether they're good things or bad things, to do that. So you can be a great predator, or you could be a great humanist. Performance character lets you be great at whatever. The intellectual and civic sides of character overlap the other two, and each other. Intellectual character or virtue, and there's a new book coming out by Jason Baer at Harvard University Press about how to do this in education. Intellectual character or virtue has to do with those strengths that allow you to pursue knowledge and truth effectively. Obviously important for institutions of education. And the civic side are the excellences and the strengths that allow you to participate effectively in the public sphere, in the social realm, whether it's political or just social. And we really need to ask ourselves, are we covering all of these? Do we want to cover all of these? What are the differences in the way we cover them? This is another definition of character. which comes from character.org, which is as close as we get to a national organization for character ed. And it really is not new. We found it in Pestalozzi, 18th century Swiss educational philosopher. We think it's in classic Greek philosophy. I haven't found it in one place. If you find it, let me know. Good character consists of understanding, caring about, and acting upon core ethical values. And the mnemonic device is head, heart, and hands, which works great when you're teaching people for whom English is their language. But as soon as it starts getting translated, that one bites the dust fast. But if you think that's bad, try explaining the three R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, to people who don't speak English. That's a good one too. So there are these three pieces. It means there's a cognitive piece, there's an affective motivational piece, and there's a behavioral skill piece. I'm not going to do any more than simply to say, oftentimes when we think about formation, we don't think about all of them. And we forget that this is all part of the constellation of the complete person. So I want to do a little meditation on formation here. Told you I'm going to stop along the way and try to connect some of this to the enterprise you're doing here at BC. And I realize I can't see time anywhere, so I got to get my phone alive so I can see time. Start with Hayden Reese and Willis Overton. Bill Overton, it was my undergraduate developmental psych professor way back when. And they talked about these mechanistic and organismic models of development. And a mechanistic model says the idea of a human being is that they are externally controlled. This is behaviorism. They're externally controlled, and the way that you form somebody is by controlling the contingencies in their lives. So you control the rewards and the punishments and the consequences of their actions and so on, and you shape them. An organismic model says instead that a human being is a meaning-making organism, and that organism is a partner in the journey. They make sense of the world around them. They try to understand things. They interpret things, sometimes distortively, sometimes accurately. And they're very different notions of formation. In a mechanistic one, you go in there like a machine and try to pull all the levers and so on and shape the person. In an organismic one, you might be likely to create experiences and context for the person to grapple with so that they develop and make meaning and grow from that. So I'm using Geppetto and Socrates. I am going to hazard a guess that this isn't the first time Geppetto and Socrates were on the same slide or mentioned in the same sentence. I can't prove that, but I think the odds are pretty good on that one. So Geppetto is the mechanistic one, the puppeteer. Geppetto controls what the puppet, in this case Pinocchio, does by moving these external strings. Socrates, on the other hand, tried to draw out of his students understanding, tried to help them find aspects of their way of knowing the world that they weren't aware of or weren't aware of adequately. He was a partner, a guide on the journey. And those are important. My friend Charles Elbot, brilliant educator, said that character education is more of a compass than a roadmap. Now, a roadmap tells you, take this street this far, turn here. Go. It basically tells you exactly what to do. A compass says, find your way in that direction. Make your way over there somehow. You figure out how to get there. And that's closer to what we're talking about here in the way we approach it. And lastly, I want to make an important distinction between the agent of formation and the object of formation. So the agent of formation is what influences formation. What influences the character of whomever character we're hoping forms? And the object of formation is what is changing? What is the stuff that makes up character? What is that which is forming within the person? And we have to really think about both of them. What's the ideal nature of that agent? Agent may be a person, maybe an event, maybe a curriculum, maybe whatever. And what are those things that we hope form? So here's some of the things I would say you have to think about at BC if you want to do this completely. And I'm going to have some more conversations with people tomorrow and next week at BC as sort of part of this. Normally, I would just be there if COVID wasn't around and have all these meetings and we do that, but we're stretching it out. Well, certainly, as Provost Quigley said, we want to form the character of BC students now and for the future. But if you take this dichotomy between the agents of formation and the object of formation seriously, we need to think about the character of the BC staff. What are we doing to shape the character of the folks at Boston College who are faculty, who are staff? And I can't see it, but I imagine half of you are signing off now. I didn't sign up for this one. I'm not talking about my character here, but we'll see in a moment why that's important. We also have to equip BC staff to impact the character formation of BC students. I've been a professor for a long time, and I've been teaching for a very long time. Nobody ever taught me how to teach. Nobody ever raised the question. We just hired this guy who just finished his doctorate and 2 years of postdoctoral work. I wonder how well equipped he is to teach at the university level. Yeah, they heard me give my talk on my dissertation when I came in for my job interview, and they saw on my resume that I had been a teaching assistant. That was about it. Nobody ever came in to observe me, and no one ever gave me guidance, and there were no programs to help me and so on. Well, likewise, we can't just assume that the staff at BC will know how to form the character of students. And we have to equip them. We also have to equip students in the Lynch School to impact the character in their current or eventual students. And lastly, we have to transform the BC culture. And I like that phrase that Provost Quigley used, which is being in community. We have to transform that culture and community to prioritize character formation and to be able to do character formation more fully and effectively. That's a lot of stuff to do. You really can't leave any of it out, or you have an incomplete enterprise. So let's talk about how does character develop. So I want to do a thought experiment with you. And we're not, as I said, I didn't do any interactive stuff because I had no idea if there'd be 40 people or 3,000 people on this call, and I didn't know what we'd be able to pull off. So you're going to do this in your head. But I've done it so many times, I know what's going to happen. Okay. Whoopsie. Did I do the wrong one? Hang on, I think I got them backwards. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't swap them like I was supposed to. This is the one we're supposed to be doing now. So I want you to think about one single thing, which is a character strength of yours. I want you to think about some characteristic of your character of which you hope that people who know you well would notice it and be glad that you, their friend, is that kind of person, an asset of your character. Maybe you're particularly caring. Maybe you're particularly responsible. Maybe you're particularly fair and just. Maybe you're particularly honest. Whatever it happens to be, you think about it. And I really want you to do this. Sit and think for a while. And you're not going to tell anybody else. So humility is irrelevant at this point. So just think of what is some characteristic of yours that's stronger than others. And once you've thought of that, I want you to think of the answer to a second question, which is a little harder. Why are you that kind of person? Where did that come from? How did you end up being particularly compassionate or particularly honest or whatever it happens to be? And that's a harder one to answer sometimes. For some people, it's easy. For some, you really don't know. But conjecture, try to figure it out. And this time, instead of asking you, I'm going to tell you what your answers were. Because after all, I'm a psychologist, so I can read your minds. No, it's because I've done this so many times in so many places all around the world. By far the most common answer, which will cover most of you, or certainly a lot of you, is one or both of your parents had that characteristic. They modeled it, you became it. Second one that a lot of people will say is some significant adult outside your immediate family had that characteristic, and their modeling inspired you to become that way also. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a more distant relative, somebody in your life. Those of you who didn't answer one of those two, another one that comes up sometimes, a little bit less, but it comes up, is one or both of my parents, usually, sometimes another adult, sometimes a teacher, sadly, had the opposite of this characteristic. And I swore I would never become that. Maybe they were a bigot. Maybe they were violent and cruel. Maybe they were, a drug addict. Maybe they were dishonest, whatever it was, a bully. And you said, I am going the other direction. For some people, it's life trauma. There's some challenge that you face now or faced in your life that required a character strength that you had to develop. Either you had some of it and you had to enhance it, or you didn't have it and you had to develop it. Maybe it was a medical crisis when you were young. Maybe it was the loss of a parent. It could be a lot of things. Those are the main ones that I hear. Sometimes I hear faith in religion or belonging to a faith community. That comes up sometimes too. Interestingly, that varies by where I do this, with what group I do it with, what part of the world, what part of the country. Uh, and every now and then someone talks about the self project. I just decided I wanted to be a certain kind of person. I worked at it. That's not that common, but it's come up. Here's what I've never heard. I have never heard anybody tell me that their character came from a curriculum, that it came from a class they took, from a lesson, from a quote, from a poster on a wall, from a reward I or someone else got for good character, or an assembly where we sang songs about character. No one's ever told me their character came from any of those things. It comes from major life events and the character of people who populate our lives in significant ways. That's mostly where it comes from. So now I got to go back to that other. So these are the things that form our character. Okay. Who, and I'm now talking about the agents of character. So teachers and educators and so on, who we are. If we want to influence the character of BC students, we want it to form. The first place we look is in a mirror. Say, who am I? What am I modeling? Who am I being? Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. I say, be the character you want to see in your students. How we treat them, how we treat others in their presence, what we profess. Lakota says, don't forget to preach what you practice. You have to practice it. If you just preach, it's not enough. Who we are collectively. That's the community, I assume, that Provost Quigley was talking about before. What shared norms and expectations we have. Are we accepted into communities that we value, that have the characteristics and support the characteristics that we want to form? Is BC that kind of place? I'm not doubting it. I'm just asking the question and saying you need to. And also how we treat ourselves, character formation as a self project. Benjamin Franklin was an interesting example of that. He apparently had a set of, I don't know, 12 or so virtues. And every day on a rotating basis, he'd pick two of them. He'd award the day to those two. In the morning, he'd meditate on them and remember which two he was going to work on that day. At the end of the day, he'd reflect back, I think maybe journal, I'm not sure, on how did he do on those two virtues. And the next day, he'd switch to the next two and the next two and the next two and just keep recycling them. He made it a self project. So what is character education? And this is where I got it backwards. So let me go back. This is the second thought experiment. Okay. And it's very much, it makes a similar point to the last one. Those of you who are parents, have been parents, you got kids at home now, or used to have, or your kids are grown. I'm assuming you wanted your kids to have good character. So I want you to think of the following. Which of these great character ed strategies did you use in your household when you're raising your kids, or now when you are raising them, designed specifically to enhance the formation of their character? Did you go out and spend your hard-earned money on these posters that have just one word on them and frame them and put them up on the walls of your house, things that said respect, responsibility, compassion, those around your house? Probably not. Did you rename the spaces in your house with cute little street signs that said things like, this is caring kitchen, happiness hallway, benevolent bathroom, tactful toilet, to emphasize these key words? Probably not. Let me try another one then. Did you start every day in your household reading a pithy quote about character, perhaps through a disembodied speaker in the ceiling of all the rooms in the house? Maybe you read some quote from scripture that had character relevance. I don't know. Did you walk around your house with those little slips of paper in your pocket, shaped like an animal's paw, most likely, that you'd give to your kids when they did something of character? And if they had 5 of them at the end of the week, they could turn them in for like an extra dessert on Friday night. Some people do token economies in the house, but not most. All right, let me try one more. Did you convene your family once a week or once a month to do an announcement of which member of your family had the best character that week or month? Probably not. Yet these are exactly what schools run to. And now I'm talking about K-12 schooling most typically, what they run to immediately. Why? Why don't you do it in the home? If it's so darn powerful, why don't we do it in our homes? Teachers, I ask this of teachers all the time, and they're stunned because this is the stuff they run to in schools, but they don't do it in their homes. So character adds a way of being, most notably a way of being with others. And for most educators, it's a new way of being. In the forthcoming book I have, the book I have coming out, I call it Nurturing the Flourishing of Human Goodness. You could probably just translate that for yourselves to nurturing the flourishing of human good, the formation rather of human goodness. So what do you need to do? What does it mean to do this stuff? So our project, it was called, started out, and our is me and Melinda Beer, who's the co-director of my center. Our project is trying to figure out empirically what works in character education. So this was funded by the John Templeton Foundation. We reviewed all the literature back in the early 2000s. We came back and added other reviews, published a piece in 2011 that was an update. And finally, we synthesized these findings in what's now called the Primed Framework. There's a journal article that I cite there, but the forthcoming book is on that topic and expands it even more. And the prime piece is what I want to sort of finish up with here. I only have time to introduce you to it, but it's very important framing. And the reason for it is what we did is we collected all of these evidence-based practices and realized the list was way too long. It was too cumbersome. So I started thinking about how I could conceptually group them. And these are sort of 6 cubby holes in which to cluster these effective practices. And what I've learned is, in essence, what these really are design principles. And the effective practices are examples of things that follow that design. I'm going to go through these one at a time, so we don't need to go through them now. You should know that back in the 2018 federal report on school safety, Primed was listed as one of the 5 national prevention strategies, prevention recommendations for promoting school safety. I can in many ways thank Jackie's husband, Rich Lerner, for this, because he invited me to speak on this topic in Washington, D.C., and that's where somebody from this report heard of it. And it's now led to this book, which is coming out in less than a month, which I can't wait to get out because it's taken me a long time to write this. But let me go through these very quickly and then we'll stop and you can ask your questions, and hopefully you're submitting questions already. So the P in prime stands for prioritization. And the notion here is that this is only going to be adequate and not excellent if it's not an authentic school priority. We know how much pressure there is in schools to focus on academic prowess and academic achievement. You can map this onto BC. I'm thinking more of K-12 schools because that's mostly what I do, but it applies. And one of the reasons that I have been, and this is true, I've been telling a lot of people that I have great hopes for BC's initiative in formation of character, because I think it's authentic. I really do. I know the Jesuit tradition. I spent plenty of time talking to people at the Lynch School and some people outside the Lynch School. I worked at a Jesuit university for a long time, and this smacks to me of authentic prioritization. And that's critical. It's critical in an elementary school, it's critical at a university, it's critical in any institution, that it has to be an authentic priority. In some senses, it's what Jim Collins talked about as the hedgehog. It has to be there. I was telling this story earlier today, which I really love. I had the joy of getting to know a guy named Rich Tierlink, who was the CEO of Harley Davidson that turned them around. They were about to go belly up, and he turned them into the smashing success they are now. And he did it by changing the priority at the organization. He came in and he said to people, what's our mission? What's our purpose? And they said to make excellent, make the best motorcycles, make excellent motorcycles. He said, nope, that's not what we do. And they said, what do we do? He said, we make dreams come true. We are in the dream business. And they rethought the whole organization around this notion of making dreams come true around motorcycles and so on. And that's how he saved the organization. And that's why I have, Harley Davidson pajama bottoms, even though I've never owned a motorcycle, and why everybody knows the name, and why people want to wear, Harley Davidson paraphernalia. Well, it's a very far afield from what we're talking about in terms of formation, but it gets at this notion of knowing what your priority is and it being authentic. I don't have time to go through the actual strategies, but I will say for prioritization, it needs to be a rhetorical priority, but it also needs be a priority of how we allocate resources. I was glad to hear there's funding at BC for research on this topic and so on. And leadership is critical. Top leadership is critical. So you have to look at your own leadership and say, do they authentically prioritize this? Or are they just doing it because their higher ups say so, or for other reasons? The R is for relationships. Relationships are the molecules from which we build great schools academically and in terms of character formation. And they're also the building blocks of character. They're the 3 R's of character education. And the key to this one is that we have to be strategic, intentional, and structural and inclusive. So we have to be strategic and intentional in saying, we are going to go out there and try to maximize the likelihood that healthy relationships are going to form here. Okay. We have to be inclusive in the sense that we have to make sure that every member of this community, all stakeholders in this community are included, and we build relationships across all of them. Because very often people get left out. And if we're not structural about it, then some people will get left out. We have to build structures for this. And a key piece I have no time to talk about now is the adult culture, the relationships in the adult culture of schools, including BC. What is that culture like? The I is for intrinsic motivation. In the education world today, all too often, educators are addicted to behaviorism, extrinsic motivators, rewards, recognitions. Um, I am somewhat rabidly against that approach. Uh, and I don't have, again, I don't have time to go through why right now, but we need to get rid of the material rewards we give people for character. We need to get rid of the public recognitions that we do for who's got the best character. That was my quasi joke before about do you and your families announce every month who had the best character in your family that month? We do that routinely. We do that, thinking we do it for teachers. Who's the professor of the year? Who's the teacher of the year? And then what happens is the other faculty get upset. I can't believe Margaret Lawrence, she got the award. She's not better than me. And it poisons the culture. And we have to stop doing that kind of work and move to private affirmation. If I think Margaret's doing a great job, I just say to her privately, Margaret, I've been watching what you're doing with this project, and it's really impressive, and it's adding so much to BC. Your contributions are so valuable. I really appreciate it. Keep it up. That's what makes BC a great place. And that's all that's needed. Okay, again, I'm moving on. The M in pride is for modeling. As I said before, Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. I say you got to be the character you want to see in others. You have to be it. This is it's a simple thing to say. It's a daunting proposition. But you can't demand from your students what you won't be yourselves. I worked for a year as a visiting endowed professor at the Air Force Academy. And I used to chide the officers there every time they were not doing what they were demanding from the cadets. So the cadets would get repercussions for not having their uniforms on precisely correctly. And the officers would come into a classroom or somewhere else, and their uniform would be wrong. There'd be something off. They're missing something. They didn't button this. They didn't do that. And I'd say you can't do that. If you're going to demand it from them, you have to be it also. And plenty of other ways on top of that. We don't have to be perfect because there's there's an escape valve, and the escape valve is apology. You apologize to somebody. You say, "I'm sorry. I fell short of my standards. I will try not to do that again. You deserve better from me." You made up for it. Okay, it has to be authentic, obviously. The E is for empowerment. This is a whole full day workshop. I think most of these are in itself. But there are a number of reasons why empowerment is important. One of them is psychological. It's a fundamental human need to have a sense of autonomy, to have a sense that you matter, that you're seen, that you're heard. Another one is political. We live in the world's greatest experiment in self-governance, which is struggling mightily at the moment. But the founding fathers knew it. John Dewey knew it. De Tocqueville knew it. Everybody who observes this knew it. And what they knew was that there's no way this experiment in self-governance is going to work if we don't have virtuous democratic citizens who are motivated to and able to enter the public sphere advocating for the common good. As far as I'm concerned, the common good is an endangered species right now, and we need to get it back. We're losing all of this. And so we need schools to help socialize our future citizens so they can responsibly inherit and lead that which we bequeath to them. We're failing at that. And it's so much more than teaching them just about it. It entails giving them the experience of the power of their voice in the common sphere. And so we have to flatten the governance structures in schools. We have to empower voices. We have to invite them. We have to listen to them. We have to allow them to have a possibility of winning the day. We have to let people know that happened. A philosophy of empowerment needs to be at the heart of a school. And the D, finally, we're about to wrap up, is for developmental pedagogy. And again, when Provost Quigley said it's for our students and their future, that's what I heard. We need to educate at BC and everywhere else. We need to form character at BC and everywhere else for the long game. We need to be thinking not just about how people are here and now. We do need to think about that, but we need to be thinking about that. And who will they be in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? Are we contributing to what often guides me, which is the Old Testament notion of tikkun olam, to heal the world? We heal the world by forming healers of the world. None of us can heal the world alone. But if we can form character at BC and elsewhere for the long game, developmentally, we are forming healers of the world. So I want you to rethink this enterprise of character formation and to think beyond your students. To understand that what this enterprise is about is not just about supporting the optimal development of those students who go to BC. You're not just in the people forming business. You're in the world forming business. We all are. And I'm hoping these thoughts help you understand that. And to do that, you need to think about, I skipped too fast. Who do you need to be yourself to do that? So this is a model that my colleague Melinda Beer has crafted. It's based on Robert Greenleaf's notion of servant leadership. And these are 8 virtues. I'm not saying you have to use these virtues, it's an example. But these are 8 virtues of what we think is an optimal educational leader. That you have sense of noble purpose, your priority driving you. You're humble, courageous, forgiving, show gratitude to others. You empower others. That's the empowerment piece from Prime. You have foresight. You can think about past, present, and future and plan out into the future. That's this developmental pedagogy piece. And you have a sense of stewardship. And so lastly, as we have this model and the Prime model, and here's how at our university, how we deliver these. We have a leadership academy and character education. We've been doing that for over 20 years. It's a year-long academy. We take a cohort of 30 school leaders and we spend an intensive year with them, helping them figure out what do they need to do to lead a school that optimally forms character in its students. We have a virtual learning version of that. It's a blended learning version of that, which is video-based, that was funded by a foundation in Taiwan because they wanted to use it there and we couldn't fly back and forth to do workshops. So it's also being used in Spain and Mexico. It's being translated into Spanish for that. We have the civil virtues that you just saw. We do all sorts of workshops and classes on those virtues. And then we have what we now call SEAL, which is funded by the Templeton Foundation and the Kern Family Foundation. And it's taking civil LACE and adding mentoring to it. So it takes those formation of the character of the leaders, blends it with the LACE, which teaches them what they need to do to lead a school. So who do they have to be and what do they need to do? And then we add on expert mentoring when they're done with the training to help them fully form, or form as much as we can. And then we have a 5-day institute in Prime. It's done over and over in Taiwan and St. Louis. We've done it in Bogota, Colombia. It was done by someone else in Pamplona, Spain. And it's going to be done in Mexico. And it's an intensive way to deal with this. So those are our delivery systems. And I leave you with my contact information in case you want to follow up. Email is probably the easiest, but we're on Facebook and Twitter. And we have a web page, which is brand spanking new and good because my wife retired and decided she was bored. So she volunteered to upgrade our web page. So I'll leave you with that thought I said before. I think BC is well positioned to do a really remarkable job with this. I hope I've given you guidance on how to do it. And I hope I haven't overly daunted you by telling you that you are in the world healing business. So thank you.